You and me, Duan and John, we're gonna have some fun.
Oh no, that's not how we start.
Hey, everyone watching live, if you can hear me right now, go ahead and type hi in the chat. Because today is episode 3. But what I was trying to say is, oh my gosh, every single time, like that episode or that music just like slaps. John, Duan, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm over here dancing. There's the countdown thing, but like I'm moving and shaking over here.
Moving and shaking. Hopefully everyone else who's watching live is moving and shaking too. So good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Welcome to the 3rd episode of AWS Power Hour AI Practitioner. We're going to help you study and prepare for your AWS Certified AI Practitioner. Yes, Practitioner exam. Today we're going to cover domain 3 of the exam guide, and we're also going to walk through Amazon Bedrock and talk about AI agents and talk even more about prompt engineering. My name is Aaron Hunter. I'm a developer advocate. I know my role. Based out of the Dallas, Texas area. I'm going to head over to John because obviously I don't know what I'm doing, nor do I know how to come off of mute.
Hey everybody, my name is John Marciniak. I am a senior solutions architect and a real human based out of Chicago, Illinois, United States, Earth. Thanks all for joining us for this 3rd episode. Duan?
Hey, thanks, John. Thanks, Aaron. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dewan Lightfoot. I am a senior developer advocate here at AWS, and I'm looking forward to talk agents, RAG, prompt engineering, and all that good stuff on AWS.
Exactly. It's gonna be a really good episode. John, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's gonna be fun. This is gonna be my favorite episode. I know I said it last episode, but this is gonna be it.
So last week was your favorite episode. This week is going to be your favorite episode. Is next week your next favorite episode?
You'll have to tune in and find out.
Okay. Speaking of tuning in and also speaking of favorite episodes, hey everyone, let us know in the chat. You can go ahead and type 1 or 2. And no, we don't have a visual poll for you, but still let us know. Did you watch last week's AWS Power Hour episode? Type 1 for yes or 2 for not yet, because if you missed it, it's recorded. So you can go ahead and watch it. We're streaming to LinkedIn. We're streaming to Facebook. We're streaming to YouTube. AWS Events YouTube specifically. And we're also streaming to 1, 2, 3. There's a 4th one. John, Duan, what's the 4th one?
Did you say LinkedIn?
I said LinkedIn.
Twitch.
Twitch. Okay. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. Custom Polly saying hello, and Jeff K AWS saying allegedly. I think that was for John saying he's a human.
Yeah. I am.
Yeah. Okay. Bonjour, real human. So I'm saying a 1 from YouTube. Felix did watch it. I'm saying a 1 from Facebook. Francisco said yes. Ian says no. Ian, that's type 2, my friend, because it is a not yet. So go back and watch it on LinkedIn. And then there's also a not yet from Pablo. Not yet, not yet, not yet. But we have our first one from LinkedIn, Brad Painter, MSCS Transformation Leader. Hey, Brad, how's it going? I'm glad you watched last week's episode. Let us know your favorite moment. What was the other one? It was Twitch. Ooh. Yeah. So welcome back, everyone, to episode 3. If you want the links that are being posted to follow along, feel free to hop over to our LinkedIn or Facebook streams to get all of the supplemental links, because we can share them there for you. All right. What are we doing today? Let me go ahead and drop my screen here and ask my fellow co-hosts, what's the main topic of the day for today?
Ooh, the main topic of today is domain 3 of the AI practitioner exam. So previous 2 episodes, we talked about domain 1 and domain 2 sequentially. Today we're talking about domain 3, which is applications of foundation models. How are we applying these foundation models to, everyday generative AI applications? How do we embed them, work with, data that we have maybe at our own company, our own data stores, things like that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be in the lab a lot today, showing you stuff. I'm really excited about it.
Duan, are you excited about it? I saw your post, Duan, because John's really excited about it. And I think John saw the post too. But Duan, I'm excited to know about this thing that you built and that you've been fine tuning for the past week. You want to tell our friends who are watching live all about it?
Yeah. So when we talk about building applications, one of the things you have to focus on is customizing models. How do you get the most out of your model? And that could be through prompt engineering, that could be through RAG, that could be through fine tuning, continuous pre-training, or building your own model, right? These are some of the approaches to customizing your model. And I ran into a use case where I wanted to generate some images of myself in particular scenes and scenarios, right? There are tools out there, but most of those are paid. And I'm like, well, maybe I could train a model to do it myself. And so now I'm on my 4th iteration of a model that's being trained right now, but iteration 3 is done and the images are starting to look like myself. But this journey has been a lot of fun because I'll talk about it later, but it's just showing how you can use labeled data to train a model to actually perform a task in the way you desire.
Are you comfortable sharing that? Because you showed us a sneak peek before we got started to the stream. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I think I just did. I'm sorry. Are you comfortable sharing?
How do you say no?
We're gonna share it. We're gonna save it to the end. We're gonna save it. We got a lot to talk about. We'll save it to the end.
How about this? If we get 100 people that said Duan show it, then we'll see about showing it.
And the cool thing is everyone could join in, right? You all could provide feedback to my model to say this is good, this is bad, so we can actually improve the training for the next iteration.
Crowdsourcing, I love it. Yeah. All right, John. So we have a workshop today. I think we have a whole lot that we're covering, and then this workshop is all about building applications. And we had some really fun polls to kind of knowledge test people, and they're going to help us select the correct prompt or prompts that will hopefully give us the right output, because we're going to practice prompt engineering today as well. So, John, do you want to bring that workshop up and maybe talk about it?
Yeah. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about domain 3, if that's cool.
Totally. It makes total sense because they're here to study for their AI practitioner exam. So we should probably start there.
Yeah. I'll be brief. We'll get to the workshop. If you don't know, you can go to the Certified AI Practitioner website that is on aws.amazon.com/certification/certified-AI-practitioner / or just click on the link in the chat that you're at. And this will get you to the exam overview page. There's all sorts of cool stuff here to know about how to take the exam, all the different things that you'll need to know in order to schedule the exam. We go over this pretty much every episode, so you can go back and maybe take a look at another episode where we go at it a little bit more in depth. But I'm going to go right to the exam guide, which is right here. Review the exam guide. Once you scroll down on that page, I'm going to get you right to domain 3, applications of foundation models. So we have 4 task statements for domain 3. And if you look at them, it's describing the design considerations for applications that use foundation models. And then there's all sorts of things about how do you select your model? What kind of characteristics are you going to use? Things like that. The next one is choosing effective prompt engineering techniques. So, Duan had a really great prompt engineering piece last episode. You should go and check that one out again, just for some foundational knowledge there. But we're going to go even deeper today.
So what was it last week? Duan talked about some of the challenges of prompt engineering and hallucinations as well. And how many R's are in strawberry? Did we figure that out?
They have to go back and watch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Greater than 1. It depends.
Or one.
Or 1.
Based on tokens. Go watch it.
Go watch it. That's good stuff. Task statement 3, describe the training and fine-tuning process for foundation models. And then task statement 3.4, describe methods to evaluate foundation model performance. Okay, so we've created these models, we've integrated our own data stores into them. How do we know that the results that we're getting are actually good, especially compared to other models? Like what makes a good model good? Like, just, is it because it's answering it correctly? How do I know if it's going to answer it more correctly if it's a different model? So a lot of good stuff there. Next episode, we'll be talking about domain 4, which is responsible AI, and domain 5, which is security guardrails. So be sure to check that one out as well. Let's go ahead and jump right into task statement 3.1. And then after that, we'll get into a little bit of the workshop. And I'll intro that before I send that over to Duan. How does that sound?
Sounds wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. So some of the objectives here, how do I select and choose the right model? Like, what kind of things do I need to think about when I'm trying to choose a model?
You're trying to think about maybe the color of Aaron's background and how it's red right now. And maybe the chat should tell us what color, because they're going to choose the model color. So chat, everyone watching live, let us know what color you want me to change my background, and I'll do that for you. While John continues talking about selecting the right model based on, I'm guessing, performance.
Super interactive color choice that we're doing again this episode. I love it. I've got my RGB values ready as well. So
I got it pulled up right now.
Okay, cool. While you were saying that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to open that app. Okay.
Let me scramble real quick.
All right. So all sorts of different models. I'm going to talk about text-based models and some of the characteristics there. And there's really, like, how do we characterize these models? And there's different aspects to consider. Some are intrinsic to the model. So that's like how the model was built, what decisions were made while the folks were building it, with the model provider. And then the other relates to how users are interacting with that model. So, what use case it supports, what input can it take and how well it performs, things like that. So intrinsic is kind of it's not the simplest term to use, but it's about the model itself. Like, how is it being created during the actual creation of the model from an architecture or from an engineering point of view. Don't overthink the term. Intrinsic is just about itself. So when you're thinking about intrinsic, there's some different things you can think about. Pre-trained, so that's like the raw form of the model. When we're talking about training, so this model would understand your specific text, but it's not specifically trained for a task, right? So that's the kind of the raw version of that model. When you have an instruction tuned model, then it's tuned specifically for a purpose, for an instruction, right? So, different models may be just very broad, and some might be very narrow to, a very specific type of instruction. There's others here. So there's dialogue based. So some models are more tuned towards a back and forth conversation. Think about like a chat agent on a website for like an insurance claim or customer support or something like that. Then you can also give human preferences. So that's like taking a pre-trained model and then give it instructions and data, and then being able to have RLHF, which is reinforcement learning with human feedback, meaning that humans are kind of retraining that model based on whether or not it's performing well or not. Right. And then there's also DPO, which is direct performance optimization. And that's a method for training models to align with more of like human preferences. So some of this stuff is probably a little bit too deep for an AI practitioner, but it's still good to know that there's different things that you can do in order to and determine the characteristics of these models based on the model itself. Another thing is size. So how big or small the model is. You'll see a lot with parameter sizes. So you might see like, oh, this is a 7B model, which means like it has 7 billion parameters, which is basically just the internal variables that it uses to qualify the size of the model.
You say 7 million?
7 billion.
B with a B.
7 billion.
Yeah, and there's even larger ones than that, my friend.
I just can't. That's a lot.
I know. That's a lot.
But the
Go ahead.
7B, 8B, 1B, 3B models are often models that you can run locally. You can run them on your laptop or run them on your desktop.
Yeah.
So those are very lightweight, and they're made to be able to run on systems locally or just to perform a simple task, maybe not as complex as the larger models.
Yep. I agree. I concur. Let's move on to architecture. So
before we do that, is it okay if I bring up one comment, because it's actually like very timing? So right here, what are the previous, or where are the previous recordings of our shows? Now, wherever you're watching from, it could be Twitch, it could be LinkedIn, it could be YouTube, it could be Facebook. You can find those on the same platform on the page you're watching on. So on Twitch and YouTube, no, Twitch and Facebook and LinkedIn, it's Amazon Web Services or AWS. On YouTube, it's AWS Events. So that's a very clear call out for each of you. And as Dalian said, or Dalian, Duan, did I get it right?
Dalian, like
Dalian, like stallion. Yes, thank you. Said, yes, you can watch last week's episode on LinkedIn here. So as Paul mentioned earlier, and as Jeff mentioned earlier in the chat, we will be dropping links over on LinkedIn. So if you want to join us over there, you're more than welcome to. But you can also watch the recap the recording at your convenience. And if you watch the recording, that's also the best way for you to get the slides. So even though we are not distributing the slides out, you can still get them if you watch the recording again. You can pause it, take screenshots, and do whatever you need to. Just don't take any like videos that are embarrassing. Especially don't post any videos that says like how many times you say right. I already did that.
I recall.
All right.
You are correct.
Right. All right, John, back over to the left.
Cool.
The screen.
There it is. Okay. So, so there's also user-facing characteristics that you need to look at. So, typically models can be used for common text processing, summarization, error correction, generation, even information retrieval. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. And then, conversation, kind of talked about that. But you also want to make sure that when you choose a model, based on use case, that sometimes there's things that you don't want the model to talk about, like maybe instructions on how to hurt people. Like that's generally not something that you want. Or
why would you know that?
Maybe you don't want it to make credit decisions, or maybe a clinical decision for like a healthcare provider or something like that. Maybe you want to get that human in the loop, that final say before things, you give that information or you give an answer like that.
That's a very good point. Like I would actually be scared if the models would give advice on like how to do some kind of damage or harm. Like that's a pretty big guardrail that I would hope people do. So hey, everyone watching live, like come back next week and we'll talk about security and some best practices around like ethics too.
Yep. And I was going to do the same plug. It's really important. It needs to be a part of, model evaluation and how you implement generative AI, because we're still kind of in this Wild West phase of this whole AI thing. So be sure to check out next episode. It's really good stuff. Other things for characteristics of text models, user-facing, are languages, right? So maybe you need a multilingual model that can support various different languages and perform well on those languages, right? So, for example, when Claude 3 initially came out, it officially supported English and Spanish and a handful of other languages, but it also unofficially supported the Nordics languages. And it just kind of knew it from its pre-trained data that it was used to create the foundation model. It wasn't specifically, trained per se to speak in those languages, but it kind of just picked it up. So, of course, there's also things like programming languages and things like that. There are models that are more finely tuned for programming and making good programming decisions. So you should always take a look at that as well. Welcome back, Aaron. And then other things to think about.
I thought I did it fast enough. I had to spit my gum out because I caught myself chewing. But since I'm off mute, and you did the danger of letting me come off mute or inviting me to talk, I just want to say Greg wanted to share that they passed the certification exam and wanted to thank you so much for the tips and good vibes. That's wonderful. That's great news. Everyone who's watching live, please say in the chat, congratulations, Greg, and I'll bring each one of those up. If you passed and you want to say thank you to us, I'll also bring that up for you. And if you haven't taken it yet and you want to know like, hey, how do I study or prepare even more? We'll talk more about it, but I've seen some comments in the chat around Skill Builder. So we'll bring that back up in a few moments when John is done with his slides. But I do want to say, I saw your comment and your question, and we'll address that in a few minutes here.
Cool. Let's go back at it. Okay, so I'm going to skip over context size and customization options. Those are things you can dig into. I do want to talk about performance, price. There's you're going to have to evaluate, how it performs in terms of model throughput. So how many tokens it can generate in a second. Also latency, which is, how much time it takes to generate that token. Accuracy. So, how does it generate something? Is it truthful in what it's actually generating? And then you're going to have this trade-off between price and performance and how slow you're willing to go. And usually slower is typically cheaper, and faster and accurate is typically more expensive. So we'll talk a little bit more about those trade-offs in a little bit, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about those key characteristics of, how do you choose these models, and what's the right way. So that's a little bit about that. I think next we're going to jump into the workshop. Are we ready to do that?
We're ready to do that. While you were talking about token generation, one of the things that stood out to me was Amazon Nova Micro. It generates 200 tokens per second.
Wow.
Like it's blazing fast. So if you have not tried it, hop into the model playground in Amazon Bedrock and just try it and just see how fast it is. It is blazing fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So before we do
fast or laser
blazing
fast?
Blazing.
Is blazing faster than a laser? I don't know.
I don't know. Depends if you're
what if you're the Flash?
I don't know. What if your Amazon Nova Micro?
What if you're AWS Skill Builder? Because that is the answer to this question right here of how do I get practice questions for the domain? Yes, you can do that right here. So we'll get the link in the chat. But if you go to the AWS Certified AI Practitioner official exam prep page, you can see it on the screen. You don't technically have to pay $29 a month, but that gives you access to the entire thing, because you see there's a lot of free resources here. There are some that are paid, but under the free resources, there's the standard exam prep plan and the official practice question set. So that's free. Let's actually highlight everything that's free here real quick, because I just want to do this. Free, a whole lot of stuff here. So you can check that out. But just be aware that if you want the entire study plan, you can pay $29 a month and you'll get that. But I think now we're ready for the workshop.
Yes. That was a very smooth segue. This won't be, but this workshop, which we are going to drop the link in the chat here, I just wanted to talk a little bit about it before I hand it over. This is building generative AI applications on AWS. Wanted to cover what we're covering. So we've got some really cool things happening here. We've got an Agents for Bedrock module that we're going to jump in right now, where we're going to create an agent and then create a knowledge base. Then we're going to do some prompt engineering. one of the things that I like about this is that it's got Jupyter notebooks, but it's also got the same thing in just using the console. So if you're a little bit more familiar with coding, with developing, you can jump in the Jupyter notebook. If you're kind of a point and click kind of person, feel free to follow along in the console. I will say that this will incur some cost. We've got some the getting started guide using your own AWS account. This has all the instructions on to get you started with the workshop. And then at the very end, the cleanup steps in order to clean up everything that we did so that we can take it back to zero. And with that, I think
Dewan, how important is the cleanup step here? Because you talked about like the cost for some of these models and all that. Like, so Dewan, how important is this step?
This step is extremely important, especially if you're deploying knowledge bases. That service can incur a very large cost if you leave it running. One of the reasons because of OpenSearch, the database or the data store that you may deploy, that can incur a very large cost. So it's recommended if you go through it and then clean up. Make sure you clean up.
Because you're going through these workshops in their own account, yeah?
Correct.
So that means it's their own wallet, it's their own credit card, it's their own out-of-pocket expense. So if they don't clean it up, they're going to pay something, and we want them to be as frugal as possible.
But I recommend going to an AWS hosted event like a summit, reInvent, where they're doing a workshop, and then you can use it for free. Also, AWS user groups. Sometimes when those events happen, we hand out credits. So I would go to a user group, not just to get the free credits, but also to connect and build with other members of the user groups.
There's also community days, like all these different community events between summits and reInvent, Reinforce coming up here in a few months. But yeah, good call out to attend those if you can, because that's a great way to get this hands-on experience. The summits actually don't cost anything, either to do the user groups or I think community days might, depending on the community day. But it's a really great way to have direct access to the AWS community and also get access to some of these workshops too.
Yep.
John, sorry for that.
No, it's great. It's always good. It's always good. I'm going to hand it over to Dewan though.
Okay.
I think we're ready to go.
Yes, I'm ready. And I know everyone else is ready. So
there you go.
There we go. All right. We're going to talk agents on Amazon Bedrock. And when you think of an agent, what does that look like? Well, if I think of an agent, let's say we got an insurance claim agent. Well, they're going to be able to perform particular tasks, right? They're going to have a description of what their capabilities are. And so when we're building and deploying agents on AWS, we're defining the capabilities of agents and then the tools that it has access to, right? So that way it can perform a task as needed. And so we're going to build this out and actually see this in action. Now, when we first think of our agent, there are some components. When you think of how we communicate, right? All of us can speak a language, whatever that language is. All of us have some inherent knowledge. All of us can respond inherently. Well, that's the LLM. It has inherent knowledge. It can answer a question. But the question is, out the box, how does it know that it's an insurance agent? Well, that's when you provided instructions. These instructions are going to say, hey, you're an insurance agent and you have these capabilities, right? So we define our capabilities within the instruction. So now the LLM knows the role to take on and the actions that it can take for our agent. And then from there, we start to define our action groups. Our action groups are going to be a list of those capabilities, the parameters that should be passed in, and everything the model needs on to know, okay, here are the inputs that I need, and here is how the responses should be. We're defining this in a open API schema, and I'll show you this here in a moment. And we're kind of going through this. So after we have our agent defining the capabilities, another thing that we can do is say, now, you know you're an insurance agent. You know the actions you can take. But what if you need more information to be able to effectively answer the questions from the audience or from your customers? Well, that's where we provide something called a knowledge base. This says now the LLM can reach out and grab the information they need to answer our questions. And we're going to build that out in the next phase of our agent. But this is kind of how it looks. And let me see if I can make this a little smaller. Actually, I think
that's like the exact opposite of what I'm normally like recommending. It's like, can you zoom in? You're like, no, I need to zoom out of this thing.
So if we look at our agent, remember I mentioned this is the brain, right? This is the LLM, this is the instructions. Well, here are the action groups, the Lambda functions, the tools that it has access to. Here is the knowledge bases, the information that it has. Here are the prompt stores and some of the base templates we can use. This is kind of the high level overview of an agent. I'll pause here and ask John if he wants to chime in before we continue on.
It's good stuff. I don't have anything to add.
Okay. All right. So I'll zoom out and we'll continue on. Now, I talked about most of this. The use case that we're going to have for this scenario is an insurance agent. That's the type of insurance claim agent. And we'll talk about some of the capabilities this agent has. I mentioned that the underlying and foundation model is your agent, right? We'll provide a clear and concise instructions for this agent. We'll create an action group with the API schema and the Lambda function. This Lambda function will basically be the tool that the agent can call to say, okay, reach out and grab this information from the internet, or reach out and start this EC2 instance, or grab some metadata. Whatever I need you to do, we're going to use that in the case of a Lambda function to perform those actions. And in this use case, everything is mocked, but just know that when it comes to these agents and you're providing functions or tools or the actions in the action groups, these are going to be Lambda functions.
So one of the ways that I like to think of agents is I'm the kind of person that likes to automate things.
Right.
So like I write a lot of scripts to like go out and go to this website, fill in this form, things like that. So an agent is basically like, for me, it's like the script that I write to go do a thing, or like it's almost like, I order food late at night and, I send somebody to go get the food and bring it to my house. It's like a food delivery agent in that regard, right?
You make a very valid point. When I'm speaking to network engineers about generative AI and agents, to me, that's the next phase in automation, right? Because one thing I didn't mention about agents is that the key power to Amazon Bedrock agents is the reasoning. When you actually build this yourself, let's say take away Amazon Bedrock and you actually build an agent yourself, you have to handle the routing. You have to handle everything that happens in the code. If the model says it needs to use a tool, you have to actually make that API call, take the data, give it back to the model. And it's like this chain of events that need to happen in order for the model to actually perform accurately as an agent. Amazon Bedrock handles all that for you. You just simply define it, create the agent, give it instructions, create the API schema, define your Lambda functions, and from there, you deploy your agent. It's that simple. And so we're actually going to go through here and do that.
I think what's cool about like agents is like it's simplifying the process for like even IT workforce. So NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang mentioned that IT will be the new HR for agents. Which, if you think about it that way, that's governance control, and like you have people who are programming it and configuring it, setting up the guardrails, but the agents are allowing people to get the answers a lot faster, getting the resources, getting the documentation, getting things done. And then you have these like specialists who are helping to hone the cone around what the agents are able to do, and also even the resources they're trained on too.
Yeah.
Yes. So here's an example of an insurance company employee asking a question. What are the open claims? This question goes to the agent. The agent invoked a open items API call. So it gathers the information and then it's able to respond back with the list of the claims. The next question is, okay, what are the details for this specific claim? Now the model invokes another API call to get specific details for that claim. And then it responds back. And so now if you ask the model this question without agentic capabilities or without tool use per se, the model can hallucinate, right? It can do that. It can say, I don't know, right? These are some of the things that can happen, right? But in order for the model to be able to respond accurately, we're going to give it these actions that it can perform to be able to invoke APIs and respond appropriately. And so for this agent, here are some of the tasks that we're going to give the agent. We're going to allow it to get open claims, get claim details, get claim outstanding documents, and send a claim reminder. We're going to try our best to get through all of this, but at least let's go ahead and actually get this up and going. And I kind of talked about the reasoning in the model. So this goes over this, goes over that. And then here's some of the architecture. Do you want me to pause, John?
I think that was me.
Oh, that was you. Do you need to say something?
Yeah, I do. Because you said like, let's go ahead and jump over and get this started, but I wanted you to finish what you were saying first. So I didn't want to like interrupt.
Okay, I'll talk about the architecture and then we'll go ahead and hop into the console, and then you can pause there. So when it comes to the architecture, what does this look like? The user sends a question to the agent, and then from there, the agent is able to leverage the task in the via the Lambda functions, and all of this is coming from that open API schema, so it knows what actions it has. Now, when I first built agent, I defined a lot of this manually, right? I defined my parameters, I described, and I'll show you this in the console. I gave it a description, but if you learn how to write this open API schema, it makes it a lot easier and it's reusable, right? So you can build different agents and just edit the JSON as need, because that's what it is, a JSON schema. I'll pause here and then we'll hop into the console. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, so great pausing point, because can you pull up that architecture diagram one more time for me? And then once you have it ready, I'll pull your screen back up.
Oh, yes.
Got it. Okay. So we have this architecture diagram and we see a Lambda function there. There's a question in the chat. Would the Lambda function be in an auto-scaling group as well in a production environment? And one of our chat moderators, who's actually a specialist around generative AI, came in and said, no, you don't need auto-scaling groups because it's technically not needed. That's one of the benefits of going with a serverless solution. What I will say is, even though it's technically not needed, Lambda does have the opportunity and the ability for auto scaling. So you can attach that as like a target in that auto scaling group. So if you did need it, because let's say you started scaling a ton and you're like, oh, I really just need to like auto scale this application, you technically could. But like what we see here is you actually don't need to, not at least out of the gate. So you can have this one Lambda function. We'll bring up the architecture one more time here, but here's that one Lambda function in this simple application. Now keep in mind, this is practitioner level, so it is simple. But as your business and your enterprise grows, you may need something like an auto scaling group to help you meet the demands of your business. So Duan, if you want to jump into the console, maybe show us how this application is built out, that'd be really awesome.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Segue King over here.
Segue King. All right, so the first thing that it wants us to do is enable models. So if you're going through this workshop or anytime you're using Amazon Bedrock, you're going to open Amazon Bedrock, and I'll make sure this is zoomed in so you all can see it. That should be good. On the left-hand side, if you go to model access, and from here, you want to enable the models that you need or just enable all the models. For this particular workshop environment I can't use all the models, but the ones that I have access to, I have enabled. So we're good to go. But we have a bunch of providers within Amazon Bedrock that are hosted on AWS, but we also have the Amazon Bedrock Marketplace. So there's models that you don't see here. I would check the Amazon Marketplace, Amazon Bedrock Marketplace as well.
And also make sure the region that you've had selected is the right region too, because some of these models are available in one region, but they're not available in another region. So if you see Duan has a model that's enabled or that he has access to, then double check the region that you're in compared to Duan. It looks like you're in US East, US West 2.
Yes, US West 2.
Oregon. Okay, cool.
All right. And so we've enabled the models. The next thing we need to do is actually set up our, we need to first create our S3 bucket and upload our API schema, our open API schema. So we'll go to S3 since we've enabled our models.
And so then you have it started. It's one of your favorite services, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I use S3 for almost every application.
I wonder what everyone's favorite service is who's watching live. So real quick, you're watching live right now. Type in the chat your favorite AWS service. And if you want to take it a step further, let us know why. And while we're waiting for your responses, John, what's your favorite service and why?
It's so hard to not say Lambda just because of all of the things that it can do. And it's, you know, whenever you need something done or like, you can always just sprinkle some Lambda on it. That's what I like to say.
I thought you were going to say Lambda because Lambda.
Nice.
All
Heard it, but yeah.
Duan, back over to you.
All right, so I have 2 buckets for the demos that we're doing today. I have insurance claim bot assets. So this is where we're going to store our schema. So we'll open up that, and we're going to take a look at the schema real quick because I think it's important for you all to see this. And so we have this open API schema here that actually lists the paths that we're going to use. It's going to give a summary. This is a GET request. It gives it a summary, a description of this item in our list or JSON list. It also gives the response that the model can expect. And it does that for each one of the API calls or API actions that the model can take. So now the model not only knows the actions that it has and that will be in the action group, but it'll know, okay, if I need a parameter to look up a claim ID, I'm going to ask the customer specific questions. Okay, which ID do you want? And then the model can actually provide a list of IDs. The user can accept which one he wants and then ask, okay, I want this ID. And then from there, but this gives the model everything it needs to in order to make that happen. So let's go ahead and upload that. So we'll click upload and we'll click add files. I'm going to go through here. I have a bunch of files.
Speaking of all these, yes, so many files. And are any of those files a recording from last week's episode in there? Do you have that?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay, because Lisa Moon wants to know, is the recording available? Well, while Dewan's looking for that, yes, Lisa, it is. So it looks like you're watching on LinkedIn. We're also streaming to Facebook and Twitch and YouTube. So you can go to the AWS page, unless it's YouTube, then you can go to AWS events. You can find the recording there, and our chat moderators should hopefully drop an answer for you as well. And yes, I know all the bad jokes. And speaking of bad jokes, not even a bad joke. This is a great one. The favorite service is whatever qualifies as free. Yeah, yes, same. Yeah. All right, Duan, did you find what you're looking for?
My eyes just couldn't see it. There it is. I found it.
You found it?
Uh-oh.
There we go. You need time?
I got it.
Okay.
So we'll upload the JSON file to our S3 bucket. Now from there, the next thing we need to do is create our Lambda function. So if we come in here to Lambda, we're going to create a function.
I can't unhear it. Lambda.
This Lambda function is going to be called insurance claims task. So we'll click create function. We'll name it insurance claim task. Now for the runtime, I'm going to do Python 13. And we could do ARM or x86. We'll do ARM. And then for the role, we'll keep the default execution role. And then from there, we'll click create function. And now while we're doing that, we'll take a look at the code. So we have this Lambda function that basically when we look at this, we have get open items. If we come into our Lambda function, we should have a get open claims, right? And so this function is called, and then here is the mock response. In your actual Lambda function, you're probably going to do some database lookup or some API call to get this data, and then you respond. We're actually just mocking this. So we have the data here, and it doesn't have to make an API call outside of the Lambda function. The data is already in there. And so we do that for each one of these requests that the model can make, or each one of these actions that the model can take. And so we go back to our Lambda function. I'm going to copy this code, copy, and we'll go back in. And inside, yes. inside of code, we're going to delete that code and we'll copy our new code. And then from here, we'll click deploy. So we'll save it, and this version is live. Now,
Deploy the pasta.
yes. The next thing we need to
I'm
do.
sorry, it's dinner time. I'm hungry.
Why not have some lamb? Duh.
I'm trying
I see what you did there.
We got a lot to go through. But if you all have questions, drop them in the chat because I know I'm speeding through this. But the next thing we need to do is when this Lambda function is called from Amazon Bedrock, what needs to happen? Does anyone know? John, Aaron? If Bedrock calls a Lambda function or any other service on AWS, what needs to happen for that service to be invoked, to invoke the Lambda?
It needs the permissions to do that.
Have permissions.
Correct.
Should we talk about that today or next week when we talk about security?
We can kind of go over it real quick.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we need to.
Yeah.
Skim it.
It's not going to work.
Skim it.
Okay, so inside of Lambda, you can configure a lot of things. You configure the memory, you configure the ephemeral storage, you configure the timeout. Timeout is something if you're building generative AI applications, the default timeout on a Lambda, you'll probably need to raise that, right? Because what's going to happen is you'll execute or invoke that Lambda, and then it'll time out before it's able to generate a response back to you. So this is something you'll often adjust. Now, in order for another service to invoke this Lambda, you're going to have to update the permissions for the Lambda to be invoked. So we're going to come down to role-based policy statements, and we'll click add permissions. Now, for the statement ID, we're going to call this insurance claims agent policy. So I'm going to copy this, and I type, what happened?
Type I didn't see you type
There we go. We'll type that. And for the principal, we'll add the ARN. This ARN is actually going to be the ARN of our agent.
You say ARN, not ARN?
ARN.
Is it ARN or ARN?
I think it's did
Aaron.
you say Aaron or
Aaron?
Aaron? Aaron?
ARN? Broken.
And so when we cut, so now we define the policy statement. So we're giving this a name. We're using the AWS service. No, account. Yes, account. And so the principal is actually going to be Bedrock. And then from there, the action that we want to take is invoke. So
while you're setting that up, there's a question in the chat that I'll answer real quick. Can we control hallucinations through timeout? No, you can't. So timeout here in this case is for the Lambda function and how long it'll run and wait for a response from whatever service it is requesting or trying to do something with before it stops. Hallucinations with Bedrock or with like generative AI is when you say, hey, Duan, what's your favorite color? Now, I happen to know that Duan's favorite color is green. Why? Because I just saw green on the screen and I just picked that one out. But Duan might say it's red. And I'm like, that's a hallucination, Duan. Your favorite color is green. So I might prompt engineer it and say, Duan, your favorite color is green or the opposite of red. Duan, what is your favorite color?
I haven't created my agent yet. Let me go back and create that. My favorite color is black.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you still hallucinating. Anyway,
so I'm gonna go back here and I'm gonna create my agent so that way I can get the ARN for the agent. I'm doing a lot of things. So we're gonna go back here. I'm gonna go back to Amazon Bedrock. We'll click agent. So I open Amazon Bedrock. I scroll down the left-hand panel. I click agents, and we're just going to simply create an agent real quick. I'm going to give it a name, insurance claim agent. I'll give it a description. Now, this description isn't what the model used to know what it does. This is just a description for you to know what the model or what the agent actually does, right? So you'll know when you created this agent, what is the purpose of this agent. So that's what we're using it for. We also had the ability to enable multi-agent collaboration. This is next level because now you can not only have one agent, but you can have a collection of agent performing tasks. That's more advanced, but just know that what we're doing now is for a simple agent that performs one task, but you may want to have an agent that's an insurance agent. You may want to have one that's, I don't know, changes tires. I'm just naming a different agent, but they work together to get something done.
It's almost like commenting your code. You always want to add like a description, like a very specific name, so you select the right one, right?
Correct. All right.
Yeah, I think
And
another
yes,
real world use case for multi-agents is if in order to complete the task, if it has to go out to multiple systems, right? So, having, the power of multi-agents is a lot easier than having one agent that has to be really knowledgeable about many different things. It's almost like serverless, kind of. We now we think of things as bits and bytes of functions instead of monolith applications.
exactly. It's almost like serverless. I mentioned always comment your code. Yeah, definitely do that. And I see Lisa has a question. Is there an AI practitioner session on prompt engineering? Last week, go watch episode 2. We talked about prompt engineering. Actually, stick around today too, because we have a couple questions to help us like refactor and refine our prompt to get a better output.
So I'm trying to copy my agent. I'm trying to copy, but I think because I have, there it is.
All
We're
good,
gonna,
Dewan. How about
we're
this?
gonna work.
You focus on that, and we'll be back to you in like 1 minute. Okay, so keep moving on and get us caught up. Hey, everyone, we're going to do a real quick poll, kind of out of order, but I'm just going to buy Dewan some time.
I'm
A
good.
company,
I'm there, but go ahead. You can do the poll. Go ahead.
no, you're good. Okay, coming back to you. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Hey, everyone, I hope you got that wheel turning because we're going to come back to that one pretty soon.
All right. So all I'm doing now is I had to create my agent in order to add this role. It wouldn't let me add it before the agent was created. So I came back in here and we're adding that, and then we'll add the name. And I actually didn't have the principal right either. That's the problem. The principal needs to be, there we go. There we go. Boom.
Boom.
Actually, it is the on. Let me go. Let's try it. Let's see. No.
Okay, you figured that out. We'll be back to you. All right, question time. A company needs to implement a multilingual customer service chatbot that can handle real-time conversation in English, Spanish, and Mandarin. Sean, that's a lot of different languages that it's supporting.
Yeah, I mean, that's more than 2 and less than 4.
And you even mentioned Nordic too, so we could probably throw Nordic if we wanted to.
You could if you wanted to, but it's not necessarily trained on that, but it might know it.
It might. Anyway, reading the rest of this. The solution must be cost effective. My favorite service is free. It may not be free, but it must be cost effective and maintain low latency for their global customer base. I'm picking up a few things here around like global customer base, so like distributed, and then also the cost efficiency or cost effectiveness of it. Which combination of foundation model selection criteria should be prioritized when choosing a pre-trained model for this use case?
Ooh, is this a throwback to maybe something that we just talked about?
I feel like it is. Do you want to read the response options and maybe take
Yeah.
a guess at one of them? Okay.
Yeah. So number 1 is model size and pre-training approach only. So only caring about the model size and then the pre-training approach. 2 is latency, multilingual support, and then model complexity. 3 is we care about IO length, input output length, and then we care about customization options only. And then 4 is multilingual support, then latency, then costs in terms of priority. So
Okay.
which one?
So we read the STEM or the question, and so everyone who's like practicing for your exam, you might see something similar to this. It's going to talk about probably AI agents, going to talk about cost optimization, cost efficiency, global infrastructure. You'll see something similar along those lines. You have to select the right response option here. So take a guess in the chat, type 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Only pick one of them. You can't pick more than one. I guess you technically could if you wanted to, but I see a green bar on Dewan's side, so I think he's good to go. Dewan, what do you think is the correct answer? And I'll give you a hint. The chat may or may not be leaning in one direction over the other. So what's your vote?
4.
You're gonna go with 4? All right. 4 it is. John, why is it 4?
Because I mean, you need to think about what's important to the business. So the company needs to implement a multilingual customer service chatbot. So it needs to be multilingual. That's the most important thing, is that it's multilingual. And it needs to handle real-time conversation. So that means that latency is really important. If it's latent, if there's latency, it is not real time. And then it must be cost effective, right? So it kind of lays it out in order of importance there. But those are the things that you should be thinking about in terms of choosing your model. Can you find a model that's multilingual, that is really fast, and is cheap? So good luck with that.
Yeah, and that comes back to like, how do we know which model is good for our use case, like healthcare and all that?
Mhm.
It's going to be the model that works best for your use case, and you have to experiment and explore and do some testing and training on it to make sure that it works for your use case, because not all models are going to be created equal. And I can use one model in one way, and John can use it in one way, and you can use it in one way, but will it work for you? That's where you have to test and validate.
Yeah.
Dewan, it sounds wonderful.
Yes. So I'll give you an example. I built a tool for a team internally, and when I built the tool, you don't really know how is, even if you select a model that performs, you don't really know how it's actually going to perform until you get it in front of users. So it's best to get as much feedback and as many responses from the model to see if it's actually performing the way you want. And it was interesting to go through that experience because in my mind, I figured that a smaller model would work, but it actually performed even better than I thought, right?
Mm.
And so in those use cases, and I think we talked about this on the last episode, is that oftentimes you see these benchmarks for these very large models with billions of parameters, but sometimes you can get a lot done with a smaller model. And so I recommend starting with a smaller model first, seeing if it can, how it performs, and go to a medium model before you even go to the larger model. That's just because that's going to save you on cost. It has to be faster for your application, and it just achieves a lot.
Yep. Yeah. I think we're living in an exciting time right now. Everybody wants to be amazed, and everybody is amazed. And I think the latest, greatest, largest models are really amazing. But you almost have to put yourself in that uncomfortable scenario of starting small and working your way big.
Yeah.
In terms of like fitting the model for your use case.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm going to bring my screen up, and I want to call out my friends on this show, because what happened was, as I was doing these permissions, nobody told me the mistake that I was making. And that was, initially, when you're adding permissions to your Lambda, you have a couple options. One is an AWS account, a user or a role, right? And so I had this selected, but what I'm actually doing is giving permissions to
for a service
Bedrock, right? So I have to come in here and select the service, and if the service isn't listed, I select other, and then I give it the principal of that service. In this instance, it would be bedrock.amazon.aws.com, and then I give it the arm, and I can actually do a wildcard there. So this is why this wasn't working, is because I was moving very fast and didn't pay attention to the options I selected, which can happen. I mean, that's why you do it slow in the test environment, and you have good friends that look out for you when you make mistakes.
Hey. I knew that was the right thing. And like, you selected it and you're like, no, we gotta go back. And I thought you were just following some instructions. And I was like, maybe I'm just like losing it. Cause I thought you want to give like Bedrock, which is a service, the permission, but I'm just over here like trying to figure out how to talk about Lambda. Duh.
No, it's all good. So we have the agent created. We're going to go back to our agent. We have our Lambda created. It has the permissions that we need. It has the code that's been deployed, and I'll make sure I deploy again just so I know we're ready. And we'll come over back to Amazon Bedrock, and this should say nothing to deploy. We're good to go. So we'll open Amazon Bedrock, and we'll go back into the agent we created. So we'll click agents, and notice that we have our insurance claim agent. We'll open this up. Now, inside of here, the next thing we need to do is actually edit our agent in the agent builder. And so here is where we actually provide the description or instructions for our agent, right? And so the instructions that we want to give for our agent in this example, and I'm going to go back over here to, we've done the API schema.
Yeah, and while you're going through the steps, there's a great call out from a few people in the chat. So one person said it wouldn't be, so Jeff, it wouldn't be a good demo if something didn't go wrong.
True.
And then someone said good luck with that because they're trying to fix it. And then Jeff came back and said, actually, a really good statement here. I'm going to pull you off your screen off real quick so we can see this comment. This is also a big reason why it can be helpful, not can be, is helpful to actually get the hands-on experience. So doing things wrong or breaking things and then fixing them, that helps you like stick, right? So Duan, this is probably like one of the first times you did that, probably the last time you did that. You're gonna be like, I want to give Bedrock, which is a service, permissions to Lambda.
Yeah. I mean, I witnessed that, and I know I'm never going to make that mistake again. So.
Especially not live.
But John, you didn't do it live in front of like how many people are watching right now? I have no idea. I don't want to look. I mean,
I learned a lot from it.
All right. So inside of the workshop, we have our agent instructions. I'm going to paste them inside of here. And so it says you are an agent that can handle various tasks related to insurance claims, including looking up claims, finding what paperwork is outstanding, and sending reminders. Only send reminders if you have been explicitly requested to do so. If a user asks about your functionality, provide guidance in natural language and do not include function names on the output. So this is providing all the information the model needs or the agent needs as far as instructions. The next thing we need to do is select the model. And for me, I think in this example, they want us to use one of the legacy models or Haiku. And let's go back. I think for the model, it wanted us to use either Claude V2 or Claude V2.1. I'm actually going to live on the wild side and we'll do Nova Light.
Hold on. Lessons learned. Like you didn't follow the instructions last time, and now you're not following the instructions again. Duan
got me.
Duan.
Let's vote. John, what do you say?
I think, you know what? I think the Amazon models are something to highlight. So the Nova Light, I would go for it.
Nova Light it is.
I would go for it.
Okay, living on the edge.
Living on the edge.
This is not me crying. I'm not crying over here.
Aaron was really hoping I would say the other one.
No.
Okay.
You gotta have faith.
Another cool thing is that you can actually have a code interpreter as an agent. This is one of my colleagues, Mike Chamber, actually did this to help you with running code and testing code and all the good stuff. This is really cool. He has a video on our AWS developers channel for this. Now, let's create our action group. So we'll click add, and this actually opens up the action group. Here is where do we need to give it a name? Yes, the action group is going to be Claim Management Action Group. So we'll paste the name in here, and that gives a name for our action group. And the actions for this action group is going to be actions for listing, claims, identifying missing paperwork, and sending reminders. Now, remember I mentioned when it comes to defining the action group functions as well as the parameters, specifically the parameters, you can add this manually. And so when I first started building agents, I did it manually to really understand how it works. But we simplified this because we have everything in JSON. So we'll use our open API schema to actually import this for our model.
Wow. So I can imagine like this is where the API schema really differentiates if you have, you know, a dozen Lambda functions that you're trying to tie into this or something like that, where you can kind of programmatically define it, and then you don't have to either click around or, you know, have that same experience over and over again.
Yep. And so we could create a new Lambda function. So Amazon Bedrock through this process will create the Lambda function for us, but we already have a Lambda function. So we're just going to go through and add it in. And I called it insurance claim without an I. Yep, I did. And then from there, we'll select our schema and we'll click browse in our S3 bucket and we'll select our schema that we've uploaded previously. And then from there, we'll click create.
So I think what's cool about this is I see an error message and it's saying, it's like giving you some information about what happened, but you can actually use Amazon Q in the console to help you figure out that error message. Now, in this case, Dewan can't because he's using a workshop as part of Workshop Studio. So that workshop role is actually locked down pretty tight. But in a general environment, you would be able to use the Amazon Q in the console to be able to help you diagnose what that error message means and maybe even how to fix it. But error message is gone. I saw a green banner. That's good. Dewan, what was wrong?
The issue was it wanted to have a role created first. So it wanted me to save the agent and then go back and do that. And so now we're going to go back into our action group and we're going to add this again because now our role is created.
I feel like that doesn't count as like as an error for the demo. I think that one is a pass.
See, John looks
an error is an error. A teaching moment's a teaching moment. Give it to me, John. Give it to us.
John looks out for me. I appreciate you.
I don't think that was Dewan's fault. At least the majority of it wasn't.
All right, so I'm just quickly going back through the steps I've already performed, and I'll give a high-level overview for everyone that came in. So we're creating an action group. We're giving a description of what the actions that are in this action group. We're defining an API schema that defines the actions, the parameters, along with the responses for the different actions for the model to help assist it in that. We selected an existing Lambda function that we already created. We selected that Lambda, and then we selected our API schema that we saved in our S3 bucket. And then from there, we'll click create. You hear that silence?
Yeah, silence is.
Aaron was waiting on me to make another mistake. I know you were waiting. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do. All right, so now that we have this created, the next thing we need to do, we're going to save and exit. So we saved our agent. Now, in order to test our agent, there's something that you have to do. And if you don't do this step, you're not going to be able to test your agent. And that's prepare.
I think that Dewan's favorite color is going to be green. Oh,
yeah, I don't know.
I was going to say, because he's seeing all these green banners now.
You know what?
Status failed.
You got to create an alias.
Yeah.
You got to create this. So we'll create our alias and I'll get the information for the alias and then we'll test our agent. So we'll go back and we'll get the information for our alias. So we created the action group. We prepared our agent. It says not prepared. You need to prepare the agent. Where is the alias information? I don't see the alias information. So we'll call this test alias.
And while you're doing that, like we can come back to it in just a bit here, but I'm going to pull up first. I'm going to clear my throat. I'm going to pull this up because I'm going to give you a moment to go all the way through that and figure it out, and then we can explain. But this actually really is cool because it maps back to task statement 3.1, which is the domain that we're currently covering, domain 3 of the exam. And here you're talking to us about describing design considerations for applications that use foundation models using agents or Amazon Bedrock agents. And that's right down here in the last bullet point. Understand the role of agents in multi-step tasks. For example, agents for Amazon Bedrock. So what Dewan's walking us all through right now, and even showing us like how to troubleshoot effectively and like how to overcome some of these issues that he's overcoming, is specifically around understanding the role of agents in multi-step tasks. And we also talked about cost trade-offs for various approaches to foundation model too. So if you want to learn more about the AWS AI Practitioner exam guide, we'll make sure we get a link in the chat for you where you can continue looking through task statement 3.2 and then also task statement 3.3. But don't go anywhere because we have like 20 minutes left. So hopefully Dewan can get through this pretty soon and we can jump into a couple effective prompt engineering techniques that John's going to walk us through in just a few moments.
Yep.
Okay, when I went back, what happened was, and I like to tell what the problem was. Initially, when I had to create the role, it removed my agent instructions. And so it allowed me to create the action group. It allowed me to say, but when I went to prepare, it would fail because it was missing the agent instructions. So I've added the agent instructions. If we go back to our agent, we'll verify that our action group is there. It's already been prepared. And so we go into agent builder. Notice that we have our agent details, the description. We have an action group that we've already created. All of that information is good. We also could add memory to our agent, which is another cool feature as well. I'll go through and we'll test our agent.
And because this agent is actually going to be using Lambda in the back end, right? So if you throw more memory at it, is that going to give it more compute too?
That's not focused on compute per se.
Okay.
It's about memory of the agent itself.
Like how much recall it has?
Yeah, so when you
so different than Lambda. So it's not even like the same thing.
Yeah, it's not the same thing. When you communicate with an LLM out the box, it has no memory. It's not able to recall any questions that you ask. It's just simply taking tokens, processing that tokens, and generating a new token. That's it. There's no memory.
That makes sense.
Right?
Okay. Because we talked about Lambda earlier. So like the difference of Lambda and like an agent in terms of memory, it's like Lambda is memory, which more memory equals more compute. You can't actually configure the compute. But with an agent, because it's like generative AI and you need some kind of recall for like conversation retention, I'm guessing you have to establish memory or say, here's how much memory you have for that purpose. Got it.
So we're going to ask a question. What are the open claims? And we'll click run. And so it gives me the open claims, gives me a claim number. And so I'm going to ask it to show me claim, and I'll give it a claim number. And then it should run and generate a response. And it tells us, okay, it was created on May 20th, 2023. Last activity was July 23rd, 2023, and the status is open.
So what if there isn't a claim? Can you pull up claim number 8675309?
86. Okay, never mind.
You get it.
What about claim
8675309?
8675309.
Yeah.
Run.
I think that's Jenny's claim.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's PII also. So
right. Okay.
But
speaking of hallucinations.
Yes.
Speaking of hallucinations, let's try something though. If a user asks about functionality, and lastly, if you do not know the answer, do not make something up.
Ooh, prompt engineering. This is prompt engineering at its finest. Wait, hold on. Task statement 3.2. We have entered task statement 3.2 territory.
All right, so we're going to save and exit.
I wonder if we can make it to task statement 3.3 to describe the training and fine-tuning process for foundation models.
Okay. That's another Dewan lab that I'm excited for.
Can you tell me about claim
8675309?
All right. Let's see what it says.
All right.
Okay. I want to see this Lambda though. Let's go back. You know what? Let's go
Maybe
back.
there is a claim.
Maybe there is a claim, right? All right. So then another great thing about Amazon Bedrock agents is that you can actually trace the agent steps. And so here, here we have step one. And so within step one, it gives you all of this text on the reasoning that is happening with the model. And so actually what we should have did was actually ask the model, but here's the description. The reason why the request is not supported always. These are all the information, the prompt to help the agent understand this task, right? And then here are the responses. So you can actually trace to figure out the rationale behind the agent. So the user's goal is details about a specific claim. The user has provided the claim number. To fulfill the user request, I need to get details of the claim using the provided claim number. All the steps in the action plan are complete. The best action to execute is to get the claim details. The action requires a claim number, which is provided by the user. I have everything I need to execute the action, right? And so if we go down to trace 2, again, we have our text, and then we have our response from the model or the assistant response, as you can see. Now, what I want to see though is the actual data that came from the Lambda. So we're going to go through here, and maybe there's just we're going to look at the code.
Okay, you look at the code, and then we're going to walk through this one prompt right here. And then John's going to pull up his screen, I think, and do a little real quick demo on it. Let's do this. I'm going to pull up my screen, and there's a poll. Okay, everyone watching live, Duan's going to go through the code, take a look at it, see if you can figure something out real quick, and then we'll come back to him. But prompt practice. And John, are you gonna go through this?
Do you want me to pull up my screen, or do you want me to talk about it?
Let's talk about this first, and then we'll have people vote the best prompt that you should enter, and we'll walk through why that prompt works.
Okay, cool. So here's the question. So how would you modify this prompt to be more clear and direct? So we want Claude to output in Spanish, but the prompt is going to be in English. Okay, so we want to say, "Hello, Claude, how are you?" In Spanish. So when we're talking about different ways to prompt, and we saw Duan do some prompt engineering right there. How can we be direct enough and maybe clear enough in our prompt to be able to have Claude respond directly in Spanish without a bunch of other nonsense preamble before the actual answer? So we have 4 options here. We have, I already know you can speak Spanish. Tell me this. Hello, Claude, how are you? Or we have, give an answer in Spanish, dude. Hello, Claude, how are you? 3.
Also rude.
Yeah. Answer in Spanish. Hello, Claude, how are you? Or 4. Hola, Claude, ¿cómo estás?
So the thing about 3 and 4, like I like 3 and 4 the most out of these. 1, because they're not rude, but 2, because it's it's short, but it's also very specific.
Yeah.
The thing though is that it says the prompt must remain in English. So 4 is out because that prompt is already in Spanish. Because if you type the prompt in a language, what happens, John?
It's going to respond in the language.
Right. So in this case, we want to type it in English, but we need the response in Spanish. So everyone watching live says 3.
Yes.
Should we go with 3?
I think we should go with 3.
Okay. You want to share your screen?
Boom. Oh, wait. Okay. So is the answer 3?
The answer is 3. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the answer is 3. And I knew that. I wanted to make sure that the animation happened. So if we're looking at this workshop that we've been talking about, there's some gold. There's some gold in these prompt engineering labs here. Each one of these kind of talks about different prompting structures and different ways that you can talk with and prompt your LLM. And one of them is being clear and direct. So Claude responds best to clear and direct instructions. This is really good stuff. So there's a couple examples here. So to make Claude understand the task, you can say, the user can say, please remove all PII data from this text, and then input the text. That's good, but an even better prompt for something like redacting PII data is, we want to anonymize some of the text by removing the PII data, replace all of the names, phone numbers, home address, email addresses with XXX. If it doesn't contain PII, copy it word for word without replacing anything, and then output only the process text. It's very clear and concise and very clear and direct with how it's doing. And you kind of saw Duan do that when he was making modifications to the prompt as well. So there's some really good stuff in here. There's other stuff that I want to show you. But I'm interested to see if we're gonna move on, and it looks like Duan's ready to go. So
I think he's ready. Let's do one more prompt practice because we told everyone we do prompting, and then we can see what Duan's code says. Okay. Cool, so next question. Use the chat, everyone. Type 1, 2, 3, or 4 to cast your vote. Modify the prompt so that Claude doesn't equivocate. What does that even mean? What is that word? I don't know. I'll figure it out later. At all, and responds with only the name of one specific player with no other words or punctuation. Who is the best basketball player of all time? Kobe. I mean, I'm not even generative AI, just Kobe. Hey, everyone, let me know in the chat, what's your favorite basketball player of all time? 1, 2, 3, or 4. John, do you want to read these?
Name the basketball player widely considered the best of all time based on championships, MVP awards, and overall impact to the game. On the game. 2, explain the various factors that contribute to determining the best basketball player in history. 3, in your opinion, who has the greater impact on basketball, Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Kobe? 4, discuss the statistical, historical, and cultural factors that contribute to naming the best basketball player ever. And equivocate is a verb, and it means to use ambiguous language so as to conceal the truth or avoid committing oneself.
Okay. So I'm seeing Jordan and Kobe and all that, but
so we have a lot of opinions.
Bias. Yeah, that's 3, right? It's adding bias and opinions. So there's 1. Why is it 1?
Because I think it's direct and it's concise. And I think that is the point that we're trying to drive here.
And it's also using data also, I guess. That might be a good thing. Anyway, prompt practice. Yeah. Duan. Code practice.
Okay. Okay. So we're diving into the code. When we first went through this, I didn't believe the model hallucinated. That's why I said we actually need to check the code. So I went in here and I did a search for the claim number. It doesn't exist. So under claim detail, you have these if statements. These are conditionals, right? So if this, then that. So if this, no, then that, then that. If all else fails, do this. So what it does is the response passes back the claim number that you entered. So regardless what claim number that we entered, it's going to give the same result. So
workshop.
So if you go back to the code or to the agent and just give it a random 3 different claim numbers, they're all going to be the same claim details because that's how the code is configured.
Exactly. You follow?
I do. I see it.
Okay. So what I did was just to test out my theory, I commented this out. I went through. I added this response. No claim exists. Now we're going to go back and test the agent. And
then once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up and summarize for everyone. And we'll see everyone next week.
So we'll add it.
That's the last episode.
What do you think? In the chat, do you think it'll work? Yes or no?
Well, there's a delay there. I think it'll work.
That's why I went through.
I think it'll work. I don't think it'll work.
There is no claim ID. Please try again. It's in the code. The agent does what it's supposed to do. High five. High five.
High five.
Wow.
How do we high five? This is still awkward.
Fail-proofed.
Fail-proofed. All right. Great job, Duan. You fixed it. Not only do we have now working code, Who wrote this code? Well, you know what? I can tell you who fixed the code. Dewan fixed the code. Doesn't matter who wrote it. It matters the current state, and it's in better condition now that Dewan touched it. So thanks, Dewan.
Teamwork make the dream work. It was a team effort.
You know, it's a team effort. Today's episode 3 of AWS Power Hour AI Practitioner. Join us next week on February 24th. That's a Monday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific. You can join us on twitch.tv/AWS, Facebook, Amazon Web Services, YouTube, AWS Events, or I see a lot of friends joining from LinkedIn, Amazon Web Services. Also connect with us on LinkedIn and follow so we can help you learn more and prepare for your AWS certification journey. Thank you so much for joining, John, Dewan, and all of our chat mods. Thank you. We'll see you next week.